The Icarus was a joke. It was a rusted, outdated warship, a relic from a forgotten war, barely held together by scrap metal and hope. The hull was patched with salvaged armor, its weapons were outdated railguns that overheated after a few shots, and its engines coughed out more smoke than thrust. The ship's AI, an old Earth model named AURA, was glitchy at best and outright defiant at worst. And yet it was home. Commander Elias Voss stood on the bridge, arms crossed, staring out at the vast emptiness of space. The Icarus drifted in the shadows of a dead asteroid field, avoiding the patrols of the Zalvoth Dominion, the most powerful alien empire in the galaxy. The Dominion had crushed humanity's fleets years ago, leaving only scattered survivors and resistance fighters. Elias was one of them. "Commander, you might want to see this," said Lieutenant Kara Dorn, the ship's weapons officer. Her voice had a mix of excitement and fear. Never a good sign. Elias turned. "What is it?" Kara tapped a flickering screen, bringing up a grainy radar feed. A Zalvoth battleship, massive and bristling with weapons, was approaching a nearby moon. "A Dominion supply carrier," she said. "That thing's loaded with weapons, fuel, and probably a few thousand soldiers." Elias narrowed his eyes. The Icarus was too weak to fight a real warship head-on. But if they could capture that supply carrier... "Options?" he asked. Chief Engineer Marco Trent scoffed from his corner. "Run? Hide? Pray?" Kara ignored him. "The battleship's escort fleet is currently refueling. That carrier is vulnerable." Elias nodded slowly. "Then we take it." Marco groaned. "We're in a flying scrapyard. We have no shields, no torpedoes, and half our cannons jam if you breathe on them wrong." Elias gave him a hard look. "Then we don't fight fair." Aura, the ship's AI, flickered to life. "Commander, this course of action has an 8.4% survival rate." "Better than usual," Elias muttered. "Prepare for boarding." The Icarus drifted through the darkness, using the asteroid field as cover. The massive Zalvoth carrier, unaware of the incoming threat, hovered near the moon, its docking bays exposed. "Hold your fire," Elias ordered. "We get close, we get inside, and we take it from the inside out." The crew tensed. They all knew the risks. The Icarus was barely holding together, and if the Dominion even glanced in their direction, they were dead. Marco muttered, "This is suicide." "Yeah," Elias agreed, "but let's make it count." The engines of the Icarus flared to life, and the old warship surged forward, toward its first real battle. The Icarus crept through the void, a shadow among the dead rocks of the asteroid field. The Zalvoth carrier loomed ahead, a hulking beast of steel and power, completely unaware of the rusted predator closing in. Elias gripped the armrest of his chair as the ship's engines hummed softly beneath him. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and they'd be vaporized before they even got close. "Kara, what's the status of their scanners?" he asked. Kara's fingers danced over the console. "They're running passive scans. No active sweeps. They don't expect trouble this deep in their territory." "Good," Elias muttered. "Then let's give them a surprise." Aura's voice crackled through the bridge. "Commander, we are now within the carrier's sensor blind spot. I estimate a 2-minute window before their patrol patterns shift." "That's all we need," Elias said. The Icarus drifted closer, angling toward a barely visible service hatch on the carrier's underside. A perfect infiltration point. "Activating magnetic clamps," Kara whispered, flipping a switch. A deep metallic clang echoed through the hull as the Icarus latched onto the carrier. The ship shuddered, but the docking held. Elias stood. "All right, boarding team, move out." The airlock doors hissed as they cycled open. Elias led the charge, stepping into the enemy ship with his rifle raised. Behind him, Kara, Marco, and 5 other crew members followed, weapons ready. The Zalvoth carrier was eerily quiet. Dim red emergency lights flickered along the walls, casting long shadows. The air smelled sterile, almost lifeless. "Split up," Elias whispered. "We need to disable their engines and seize the bridge before they call for help." The team nodded, breaking into smaller groups. Kara and 2 others moved toward the control center, while Marco and a pair of engineers hurried to sabotage the reactor. Elias and his squad took point toward the command deck. The halls of the Zalvoth ship were too clean, too perfect, a stark contrast to the patched-up, battle-scarred Icarus. The Dominion built its warships like cathedrals, massive, imposing, and flawless. But even the mightiest temple could burn. Elias signaled for a halt as a Zalvoth patrol rounded a corner. 3 tall, armored figures with reptilian features, their skin a deep violet under their helmets. Their elongated fingers twitched over plasma rifles, unaware of the humans hiding just beyond the corridor. Elias didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, firing 2 quick shots. The first Zalvoth's helmet shattered, a spray of dark blood hitting the walls. The second tried to raise his weapon, but Kara's sharpshooting dropped him instantly. The third alien let out a guttural snarl, reaching for an alarm panel. Elias slammed into him, driving a blade deep into his side. The alien convulsed, let out a rattling hiss, and slumped to the ground. "Move," Elias ordered, wiping the blood off his knife. The humans advanced, pushing deeper into the ship, their breaths steady, their fingers tight around their triggers. The Icarus might have been weak, it might have been old, but its crew? They were hunters. Meanwhile, in the engine bay, Marco cursed under his breath. "This ship is too advanced for us to rig a simple overload." His partner, Devon, grunted. "Then we do it the old-fashioned way. We break everything." Marco grinned. "Now you're speaking my language." He pulled out a plasma torch and started slicing into the primary coolant lines. If the reactor overheated, this ship would be nothing but a drifting corpse. A klaxon suddenly blared overhead. "Intruders detected. Lockdown initiated." Marco swore. "Looks like they found the others. Time to hurry." Elias felt the ship lurch beneath his feet. The corridors shifted to emergency lockdown, thick blast doors slamming down at every junction. "Kara, talk to me." Her voice came through his earpiece, strained. "They've locked down the bridge. We're pinned down outside the command center." Elias glanced at the corridor ahead. They were running out of time. "Then we blow our way in," he said grimly. The Icarus had been a joke once, a broken, forgotten relic. But today, it was about to burn the Dominion's fleet to ashes. The Icarus crept through the void, a shadow among the dead rocks of the asteroid field. The Zalvoth carrier loomed ahead, a hulking beast of steel and power, completely unaware of the rusted predator closing in. Elias gripped the armrest of his chair as the ship's engines hummed softly beneath him. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and they'd be vaporized before they even got close. "Kara, what's the status of their scanners?" he asked. Kara's fingers danced over the console. "They're running passive scans, no active sweeps. They don't expect trouble this deep in their territory." "Good," Elias muttered. "Then let's give them a surprise." Aura's voice crackled through the bridge. "Commander, we are now within the carrier's sensor blind spot. I estimate a 2-minute window before their patrol patterns shift." "That's all we need," Elias said. The Icarus drifted closer, angling toward a barely visible service hatch on the carrier's underside. A perfect infiltration point. "Activating magnetic clamps," Kara whispered, flipping a switch. A deep metallic clang echoed through the hull as the Icarus latched onto the carrier. The ship shuddered, but the docking held. Elias stood. "All right, boarding team, move out." The airlock doors hissed as they cycled open. Elias led the charge, stepping into the enemy ship with his rifle raised. Behind him, Kara, Marco, and 5 other crew members followed, weapons ready. The Zalvoth carrier was eerily quiet. Dim red emergency lights flickered along the walls, casting long shadows. The air smelled sterile, almost lifeless. "Split up," Elias whispered. "We need to disable their engines and seize the bridge before they call for help." The team nodded, breaking into smaller groups. Kara and 2 others moved toward the control center, while Marco and a pair of engineers hurried to sabotage the reactor. Elias and his squad took point toward the command deck. The halls of the Zalvoth ship were too clean, too perfect, a stark contrast to the patched-up, battle-scarred Icarus. The Dominion built its warships like cathedrals, massive, imposing, and flawless. But even the mightiest temple could burn. Elias signaled for a halt as a Zalvoth patrol rounded a corner. 3 tall, armored figures with reptilian features, their skin a deep violet under their helmets. Their elongated fingers twitched over plasma rifles, unaware of the humans hiding just beyond the corridor. Elias didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, firing 2 quick shots. The first Zalvoth's helmet shattered, a spray of dark blood hitting the walls. The second tried to raise his weapon, but Kara's sharpshooting dropped him instantly. The third alien let out a guttural snarl, reaching for an alarm panel. Elias slammed into him, driving a blade deep into his side. The alien convulsed, let out a rattling hiss, and slumped to the ground. "Move," Elias ordered, wiping the blood off his knife. The humans advanced, pushing deeper into the ship, their breaths steady, their fingers tight around their triggers. The Icarus might have been weak, it might have been old, but its crew? They were hunters. Meanwhile, in the engine bay, Marco cursed under his breath. "This ship is too advanced for us to rig a simple overload." His partner, Devon, grunted. "Then we do it the old-fashioned way. We break everything." Marco grinned. "Now you're speaking my language." He pulled out a plasma torch and started slicing into the primary coolant lines. If the reactor overheated, this ship would be nothing but a drifting corpse. A klaxon suddenly blared overhead. "Intruders detected. Lockdown initiated." Marco swore. "Looks like they found the others. Time to hurry." Elias felt the ship lurch beneath his feet. The corridors shifted to emergency lockdown, thick blast doors slamming down at every junction. "Kara, talk to me." Her voice came through his earpiece, strained. "They've locked down the bridge. We're pinned down outside the command center." Elias glanced at the corridor ahead. They were running out of time. "Then we blow our way in," he said grimly. The Icarus had been a joke once, a broken, forgotten relic. But today, it was about to burn the Dominion's fleet to ashes. The ship rumbled beneath Elias's boots as the Zalvoth carrier reacted to the attack. Automated defense turrets unfolded from the ceiling, swiveling toward the intruders. The dull whir of charging plasma filled the air. "Cover!" Elias shouted as he dove behind a bulkhead. A volley of blue plasma bolts tore through the corridor, searing the metal where he had stood just seconds ago. Kara's voice came through the earpiece, breathless. "We need to take out those turrets or we're fried." Elias peeked out, spotting the power conduits running along the ceiling. If he could hit them... "Marco!" he barked. "Can you cause a power surge?" Marco's voice crackled back. "I can if you don't mind blowing up half the ship." "Just the turrets, Marco." Fine. Give me 10 seconds." Elias gritted his teeth. They didn't have 10 seconds. The turrets whirred again, tracking their movements. Then the lights flickered. The turrets stuttered, their glowing barrels dimming. Then boom! Sparks exploded from the ceiling as the conduits overloaded, sending electric discharges arcing across the walls. Elias didn't wait for an invitation. Move! His team surged forward, stepping over the charred wreckage of the turrets. Nice work, Marco, Elias muttered into his comm. Marco snorted. Yeah, just don't die before you buy me a drink. Elias smirked. No promises. At the bridge doors, Kara and her team took cover behind cargo crates. A group of Zalvoth soldiers, clad in black combat armor, had barricaded themselves inside. The doors were half open, locked mid-cycle by the ship's emergency lockdown, leaving a narrow gap barely big enough for a human to squeeze through. Status? Elias whispered as he slid beside Kara. 5 hostiles inside, all armed to the teeth, she muttered. We try to rush in. We're vaporized. Elias took a deep breath. Then we don't rush in. He reached into his belt and pulled out a shock grenade. Non-lethal. Wouldn't kill them, but it would make them wish they were dead. On my mark, he whispered. Kara nodded, her fingers tightening around her rifle. Elias counted down. 3, 2, 1. He lobbed the grenade through the gap, a blinding flash, a deafening burst of electricity. The Zalvoth inside let out inhuman screeches, their bodies convulsing as the charge sent them sprawling. Go! Elias roared. The team slipped through the gap, weapons raised. The Zalvoth barely had time to react before Kara and the others put them down with a flurry of precise shots. And just like that, the bridge was theirs. Elias stormed toward the main control console, the Dominion's finest warship, now in human hands. He activated the ship-wide comms. His voice rang through the halls. This is Commander Elias Voss. Your bridge is taken. Your reactor is sabotaged. If you don't want to die in a floating coffin, stand down. Now. Silence. Then, across the ship, the Dominion soldiers dropped their weapons. They had won. But Elias wasn't done. He turned to Kara. Set course for the nearest Dominion fleet. She blinked. Wait, we're taking the fight to them? Elias's eyes were cold as steel. This was never just about survival. His grip tightened on the console. It's about payback. The stolen warship rumbled as it turned, engines burning bright. The Icarus was no longer a joke. It was a threat. And the galaxy was about to find out just how dangerous humanity could be. The Zalvoth fleet loomed ahead, a vast armada of imposing dreadnoughts, sleek destroyers, and swift attack craft. Against them, the stolen carrier, once a symbol of Dominion power, now bore an entirely different purpose. Elias stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the railing as the ship hurtled toward the enemy lines. Kara stared at him. I hope you have a plan, because I don't think we're talking our way out of this. Elias exhaled slowly. We're not here to talk. They were here to send a message. The Zalvoth were arrogant, overconfident. That was their mistake. The moment the carrier approached the fleet, incoming hails flooded the comms. A guttural, growling voice filled the bridge. This is Commander Zevol of the Zalvoth Dominion. You are aboard a stolen vessel. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick. Elias grinned. Mute them? Kara smirked. Gladly, Aura's voice chimed in. Commander, our weapon systems are locked to prevent unauthorized use. I estimate a 98% chance that their security override will shut us down in less than 3 minutes. Elias smirked. We don't need their weapons. Marco groaned. Why do I hate that tone? Because it means we're about to do something stupid. Inside the Dominion flagship, Zalvoth officers stared at the approaching carrier. What are they doing? One of them growled. Why aren't they stopping? Then it hit them. The ship was accelerating, right toward them. Brace! Elias shouted. The stolen carrier smashed into the side of a Dominion destroyer, tearing through its hull like a blade through flesh. Explosions erupted across the impact point as the destroyer broke apart, its engines detonating in a brilliant inferno. The bridge rocked violently. Sparks burst from the ceiling, consoles overloaded, and alarms screamed through the ship. Elias coughed, dragging himself up. "Damage report!" Kara wiped blood from her lip. "Hull integrity at 40%. Shields are fried." Marco groaned. "And that was just one ship. What the hell is the next step?" Elias grinned. "Now we fight dirty." He turned to Aura. "We still have control of their docking bays?" "Affirmative." A ruthless idea took shape. "Then open every single airlock on this ship." Aura hesitated. "That will vent a significant number of the remaining Zalvoth crew into space." Elias's jaw tightened. "Good." A beat of silence. Then, hiss! Across the ship, the Zalvoth screamed as doors yawned open, sucking soldiers and officers into the void. A few minutes ago, this ship belonged to them. Now it belonged to the humans. Outside, the Zalvoth fleet hesitated. They had expected a routine execution. Instead, they were watching one of their own warships rampage through their ranks. And then, before they could react, Elias sent the next message. He accessed the fleet-wide comms, his voice calm, steady, and full of venom. "This is Commander Elias Voss of the Icarus." He paused, letting his name sink in, letting them remember what humanity had been before they crushed it. "You should have killed us when you had the chance." He cut the signal. And then he turned the ship's reactor into a bomb. The stolen carrier's reactor groaned, its core overloading under the pressure of Elias's final command. Aura's voice rang through the bridge, calm despite the impending disaster. "Commander, the ship's main reactor will reach critical mass in 90 seconds. Recommend immediate evacuation." Kara's eyes widened. "You turned this whole thing into a bomb?" Elias didn't break stride. "We weren't keeping it." Marco swore, already sprinting for the emergency transport bay. "I hate you, Elias. I swear, if we survive this, you'll buy me a drink, I know." Elias shouted over the wailing alarms. The Zalvoth fleet was in chaos. The Dominion battleships hesitated, unsure whether to fire on the ship or flee. Their own warship had suddenly become the deadliest weapon in the battle. But Elias wasn't waiting around to see their decision. "Get to the Icarus," he barked. His crew bolted through the smoke-filled corridors, their boots pounding against metal. The ship was dying, bulkheads rupturing, fire consuming the halls. But Elias had gotten what he wanted. He had shaken the Dominion to its core. The Icarus hovered nearby, its airlock doors wide open, waiting for its crew. The moment Elias and the others leaped aboard, Kara slammed the hatch shut. "Punch it!" she shouted. The Icarus's engines flared, the old warship veering away from the doomed carrier just as, boom! The stolen warship detonated, a blinding supernova of fire and shrapnel that tore through the Zalvoth fleet. Nearby battleships were ripped apart, their hulls shredded by the sheer force of the explosion. Others were crippled, their systems fried by the energy surge. The Zalvoth, once an unstoppable force, were now scattering in panic. And in the middle of it all, the Icarus slipped away, broken, battered, but victorious. Inside the ship, Elias slumped into the captain's chair, catching his breath. The bridge was filled with the scent of scorched metal and sweat. But no one spoke. They had just done the impossible. Marco let out a shaky laugh. "We just took out a whole damn fleet." Kara exhaled, staring at Elias. "You really are insane." Elias smirked, wiping blood from his temple. "Insane works," Aura's voice crackled in. "Commander, I must inform you that as of this moment, the Zalvoth Dominion has classified you as an intergalactic terrorist." Elias grinned. "Good." The weakest warship in the galaxy had just declared war, and now the real fight was about to begin. The Icarus limped through deep space, its engines struggling after the battle. The ship had survived. Barely. Elias sat in the captain's chair, a blood-stained bandage wrapped around his arm. The adrenaline of the battle had worn off, replaced by the crushing weight of reality. They had won a battle, sure. But now? They had pissed off the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Kara sat beside him, typing furiously at her console. "I'm pulling up Dominion comms chatter. You're gonna love this." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Go on," she smirked. "They're panicking. That ship we just blew up? It wasn't just any carrier. It was a command ship for an entire Dominion battle group." Elias grinned. "So, we didn't just hurt them. We humiliated them." Marco groaned from across the bridge. "Oh, great. That means they're sending every ship they've got after us." Kara's smirk faded. "Yeah, about that. I intercepted an encrypted message. Dominion High Command just put out a kill order. We're officially their #1 target." Silence fell over the bridge. The Icarus, the weakest warship in the galaxy, had just become public enemy #1. Elias leaned back, considering their next move. "We can't run forever. We need allies." Marco snorted. "Who the hell would help us? We're flying a junker and just declared war on an empire." Elias's expression hardened. "There are plenty of people out there who hate the Dominion as much as we do." Kara pulled up a star map, her eyes narrowing. "There's one place we could go. The Veil Expanse." Marco looked at her like she was crazy. "You want to hide in pirate space?" Elias smirked. "Not hide. Recruit." Kara nodded. "The Dominion's been trying to crush the pirate lords for years. If we can convince them to work with us..." Marco threw up his hands. "Great. So now we're not just fighting the Dominion. We're trying to convince a bunch of criminals to join our lost cause war." Elias stood, staring out at the stars. "We're not a lost cause." His voice was steady, cold, determined. "We're the spark that's going to burn the Dominion to the ground." He turned toward Kara. "Set a course for the Veil Expanse. Let's go find ourselves an army." The Icarus engines roared to life, and the rusted warship vanished into the void. The Dominion thought they had seen the worst of humanity. They were dead wrong. The Icarus tore through the black void of space, heading toward one of the most dangerous regions in the galaxy, the Veil Expanse. It wasn't a star system. It wasn't even a sector. It was a lawless abyss where the Dominion's influence barely reached, a collection of broken planets, shattered warships, and a tangled web of criminal syndicates, rogue warlords, and outcasts who had nowhere else to go. If there was any place to find allies who hated the Dominion as much as Elias did, this was it. Kara sat at the helm, scanning their destination. "We're coming up on Dead Rock Station." Elias leaned forward. "Still operational?" She scoffed. "Define operational. It's being held together by sheer spite. No government, no law, just pirates, mercenaries, and people who'd stab you for a half-credit chip." Marco grumbled. "Sounds cozy." Elias smirked. "Exactly why we're here." Kara turned in her seat. "So who are we talking to first? Warlords? Black market arms dealers?" Elias exhaled. "We start with Revik Core." Marco's eyes widened. "The Butcher of Jorna 5? Elias nodded. "He's not just a pirate. He's an ex-Dominion admiral. They left him to die. Now he runs the biggest fleet in the Expanse. If anyone has a grudge against the Dominion, it's him." Kara frowned. "And if he decides to kill us instead?" Elias grinned. "Then we'll just have to change his mind." The Icarus docked at Dead Rock Station, its landing struts groaning as they settled onto the rusted metal floor. The moment the airlock hissed open, The stench of oil, sweat, and corruption hit them. The station was a chaotic mess. A sprawling city of dimly lit corridors, flickering neon signs, and merchants selling everything from stolen Dominion weapons to black market cybernetics. Armed men and alien mercenaries watched them carefully, hands hovering over their weapons. Elias adjusted his jacket and strode forward, unshaken. "Let's go find Kor." They found him in a dark, smoke-filled den, sitting at the head of a long table surrounded by killers. Revik Kor was a mountain of a man, bald, scarred, and dressed in a patchwork of old Dominion armor and pirate leathers. His cybernetic eye glowed red, scanning Elias and his crew as they approached. "You've got guts showing up here," Kor rumbled, his voice like grinding metal. "The Dominion's got a price on your head already." Elias sat across from him. "Then you know why I'm here." Kor chuckled. "You want me to fight your little war?" He leaned forward. "Why shouldn't I just hand you over to the Dominion and collect the bounty myself?" Elias smiled. "Because you hate the Dominion more than you like money." Silence. Then Kor barked out a laugh. "You're either brave or insanely stupid." Elias shrugged. "Maybe both." Kor leaned back, studying him. "You took down a Dominion fleet with a rusted-out warship. That's impressive." He stroked his chin. "But if you want my help, you need to prove something to me first." Elias narrowed his eyes. "What?" Kor grinned, showing cybernetic teeth. "There's a Dominion supply freighter passing through the Expanse tomorrow." His metal fingers tapped against the table. "Steal it. Bring it back here." His grin widened. "Then we'll talk." Elias exhaled. "Fine. Consider it done." Kor laughed again. "I like you, Captain." His cybernetic eye glowed brighter. "But if you fail?" He gestured to the pile of skulls in the corner. "Well, let's just say I've got room for one more." The Icarus drifted through the shadows of the Veil Expanse, waiting. Ahead, cutting through the void, was their target. A Dominion supply freighter, its dull silver hull reflecting the light of a distant star. It was large, slow, and carrying enough supplies to fuel an entire fleet. And soon, it would belong to them. Elias stood on the bridge, his hands resting on the console. "Status?" Kara adjusted her headset. "Freighters running on minimal escort, only 2 Dominion gunships. Either they think no one's crazy enough to attack them out here, or they don't know we're in the area." Marco scoffed. "If they don't know now, they're about to." Elias smirked. "Good." He turned to Kara. "Weapons ready?" She sighed. "Commander, we don't have weapons." Elias shrugged. "Then we'll just have to steal it the old-fashioned way." The Icarus approached at a steady pace, looking harmless, insignificant, just another forgotten ship in a lawless sector. The Dominion gunships hailed them. A cold, synthetic voice came through. "Unidentified vessel, state your purpose." Elias tapped the comms. "This is Captain Jonas Mercer of the, Silver Star. Our ship's reactor is failing. Requesting emergency docking for repairs." Silence. Then, "Stand by for verification." Kora's fingers flew across the console, overriding the Dominion's security checks with a forged transponder signal. A few tense seconds passed. Then, "Authorization confirmed. Proceed to docking bay 2. Elias grinned. "They're letting us in." Marco let out a breath. "I can't believe that actually worked." Elias chuckled. "Never underestimate how lazy Dominion security can be." As the Icarus latched onto the freighter's docking bay, the crew moved fast. Elias, Kara, and Marco led a strike team, pushing into the ship's corridors. The freighter's crew was minimal, only a handful of engineers and security personnel. The first Dominion guard barely had time to react before Kara's pistol dropped him. Another reached for his communicator. Marco slammed him against the wall, knocking him out cold. Elias checked his watch. 3 minutes. They needed to move fast. They reached the freighter's bridge, surprising the captain and his officers. A tense standoff followed. The Dominion captain, a cold-eyed Zalvoth commander, glared at Elias, hands raised but defiant. "You think stealing this ship will change anything?" the Zalvoth sneered. "The Dominion will hunt you down and burn you to ash." Elias leveled his pistol. "Yeah!" He fired. The control panel behind the captain exploded, sending sparks flying. The Dominion officers flinched. Elias stepped forward, unshaken, unbothered. "You're gonna send a distress signal, aren't you?" he said calmly. "Tell your bosses we're out here?" The Zalvoth clenched his jaw. Elias leaned in. "Let me save you the trouble." He smashed his fist against the comm controls, shattering the transmitter. The Zalvoth's eyes widened. "No one's coming for you," Elias said, his voice like steel. He turned to Kara. "Take the ship." The Icarus and the stolen freighter blasted away from the Dominion patrol zone, disappearing into the depths of the Veil expanse. Deadrock Station was waiting. And Revik Kor would see that Elias and his crew weren't just desperate rebels. They were a problem the Dominion couldn't ignore. The Icarus and the stolen Dominion freighter emerged from hyperspace, drifting toward Deadrock Station like two ghosts returning from war. Inside the bridge, Kara let out a slow breath. "I can't believe we actually pulled that off." Marco leaned back in his chair. "We hijacked a Dominion supply ship, made it out alive, and now we're about to bargain with a pirate warlord." He glanced at Elias. "You really don't do anything the easy way, do you?" Elias smirked. "Where's the fun in that?" Ahead, Deadrock loomed, an ugly, rusted monstrosity of a space station, barely held together by old Dominion wreckage and stolen tech. It was a haven for criminals, warlords and exiles, and right now, it was their best chance at building an army. Kara opened comms. "Deadrock Control, this is Captain Elias Voss. We have a delivery for Revik Kor." Silence. Then, "Docking Bay 13. Don't keep him waiting." Elias exhaled. "Here we go." Inside the station, Revik Kor was waiting. The warlord sat at the head of his table, his cybernetic eye scanning the freighter's cargo manifest with quiet amusement. Around him, his lieutenants, a mix of ex-military, smugglers, and hardened killers, watched Elias and his crew carefully. Finally, Kor chuckled. "Well, well, you actually did it." He looked up. "I underestimated you, Captain Voss." Elias kept his expression even. "So, do we have a deal?" Kor leaned forward. "You want me to throw my fleet into a war against the Dominion?" His metal fingers tapped against the table. "That's not a small request." Elias crossed his arms. "You hate them as much as we do. They left you to die. This is your chance to get even." Kor chuckled. "Oh, I don't need revenge, Captain. I need profit." He gestured to the freighter. "This shipment is impressive, but it's not enough. If you want my fleet, I need more than a single supply run." Elias tensed. "What do you want?" Kor's cybernetic eye glowed red. "The Dominion is holding a high-value prisoner on one of their black site prisons." His lips curled into a grin. "I want them." Kara stiffened. "You're asking us to break into a Dominion prison?" Kor smiled wider. "You pulled off a supply raid. Now prove you can do the impossible." Elias exhaled slowly. "And if we do?" Kor leaned back, grinning like a man who had already won. "Then my fleet fights with you." As the crew walked back toward the Icarus, Kara shook her head. "You know this is insane, right?" Elias smirked. "Insane works." Marco sighed. "You say that way too much." Elias turned to face them, his expression hard. "This is it. We get Core's fleet, we hit the Dominion where it hurts, and we turn this war into something they can't ignore." His hands clenched into fists. "They think they've already won." He looked at the distant stars. "Let's remind them why humanity doesn't die easy." The Icarus's engines flared, carrying them toward their next mission. The weakest warship in the galaxy had just declared all-out war. The Icarus hurtled through hyperspace, bound for the Dominion's most secure prison station, Black Site Omega. Inside, held under maximum security, was the key to turning the tide of the war. The prisoner Rivik Core wanted wasn't just anyone. They were a former Dominion strategist, someone who knew every weakness in the Dominion's fleet formations, supply chains, and planetary defenses. If they could break them out, Core's pirate fleet would join them. And then? Then they would set the galaxy on fire. The plan was reckless, borderline suicidal. The Icarus dropped out of hyperspace under the cover of a decoy distress signal, posing as a damaged cargo hauler. The Dominion, cautious but overconfident, allowed them close enough to dock. Elias and his crew breached the prison's outer defenses, cutting through security with brutal efficiency. Silent kills, hacked cameras, quick ambushes. But then, the alarms blared. A squadron of Dominion enforcers descended on them, plasma rifles blazing. The corridors became a war zone, bullets and energy bolts ricocheting off steel walls. Kara took point, snapping off headshots with surgical precision, while Marco detonated a side passage, cutting off reinforcements. And Elias? Elias led the charge. By the time they reached the prisoner's cell, the facility was burning. The heavy doors hissed open, revealing Admiral Lucian Vale, a former high-ranking Dominion officer, a legend, a traitor to the Empire. Vale stepped forward, eyes sharp. "You came all this way to save me?" Elias grinned, tossing him a weapon. "We came to finish what you started." They fought their way out, stealing a Dominion stealth cruiser and escaping before reinforcements arrived. When they returned to Dead Rock Station, Rivik Core was waiting. And when he saw Vale standing beside Elias, his grin stretched wide. "You actually did it," Core muttered. "You insane, reckless bastard." Elias held out his hand. "Are you in?" Core shook it. "Let's burn the Dominion to the ground." From that moment on, the Icarus was no longer alone. The pirate fleets rose in rebellion. The Dominion's enemies, once scattered and leaderless, rallied under a single cause. And at the center of it all, leading the charge, was the weakest warship in the galaxy. The ship they had laughed at. The ship they had ignored. The ship that would become their nightmare. Because the Icarus wasn't weak anymore. It was a legend, and its war had just begun.